So the project that we're doing with Tate and Recreative is an installation that we've called the Hello Cube. And it's a sculptural object. It's a mirrored cube, internally mirrored, that pays tribute to some of Yayoi Kusama's work. But what we're adding to it is a social component. So we've added a piece of technology to it that enables it to be communicated with via Twitter. So that means that you can communicate it directly by just sending messages to it as you'd send to any other person who's on Twitter. Then the object will react, change its color, go between scenes and other interactive effects, and then actually send a grab or a screen grab of itself back to the person that made that initial contact via Twitter. Also, the object's going to react to audio in the actual physical space as well. So be able to approach the object, speak to it, whisper to it, joke with it, and it will respond visually to your voice. Now, that's something that we're really interested in, to make these bridges between the virtual, social worlds and physical reality. We think it's really interesting to play with those ideas of space and location. The other thing that we're doing is actually projecting the interior of the object into the turbine hall itself, which should act as a kind of beacon to the object. So we're hoping that when people walk into the turbine hall, they'll see this projection, be intrigued by it, and then go and approach the object and have a kind of conversation with it, as it were.
So the way we got involved with this project was that we'd been doing some other kind of youth projects at the Tate Britain with a gentleman called Jammer, and it was an audio reactive kind of VJ system, and we worked with youth groups and Jammer to create this VJ, as kind of a VJ app, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it's kind of audio responsive installation that he could MC into, but then the youth groups could put their own imagery into, and really trying to make a system.
So the way that we responded to this brief was that we looked at Kusama's work. There's the classic kind of spots and dots, but then there's also things like The Passing Winter and some of her lovely films that she made in the 60s. And there are some similarities between some of the areas she's explored and some of the areas that we've looked at in the past. And we thought it would be nice to try to find a way to use some of the ideas and work with some of the ideas that she's played with that resonate with some of the ideas we've been working with, but then mash them together with a kind of physical and digital object that you could communicate with.
So I think previous work that we've done that inspired this project, I think the biggest one was the Hello Wall, which was a responsive installation that was on a kind of architectural scale. So it's a projection that was on the side of a building in Wembley.
Wembley, yeah.
Yeah, in Wembley, opposite this great pub, actually. And we projected this whole physics simulation, and you could interact with it via Twitter, so you could send colours to it, or you could make it go faster or slower, make the objects bigger or smaller. And I think the guys in the pub were quite
sceptical.
They were fairly sceptical to start with, and then we came back a week later, and they'd all got Twitter accounts, and they were all talking to their mates.
They'd all go outside, smoke a cigarette, and go, "Oh, watch this!"
Yeah, I'll turn it blue.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a big
and then we made some.
But you'd made optical boxes.
Yeah,
before,
we made
right?
some optical toys that were they didn't have any digital element to them, but they were just infinite boxes that you could look into, and kaleidoscopes, those kinds of simple. We like analog toys. There's bits of a project called Feedback, which is a virtual mirror that plays with your own image and breaks you down. So it's a camera interaction, and the way that you play with it is that it's like slit scanning, and it'll play with you, make you into turn your image into small slits or shatter your image.
So the way you can get involved in the Hello Cube, there's a couple of different ways you can get involved. You can tweet at it as you tweet to anyone in the world, and you can do that, well, anywhere that you have a device and internet access. You can also approach the object in the Tate Modern itself and look in through a couple of little peepholes to see inside as an optical object. And also it'll respond to your voice in a responsive sense. So if I say something, the imagery on the inside of the cube will change. But we're also going to be collaborating with Recreative to hold a series of workshops that will enable us to collaborate with these youth teams across London to work out what that imagery and what that content should be on the inside of the cube. And then also, I believe there's a competition that's being run as well, which will allow one lucky winner to go and visit Kusama's studio actually in Japan and respond to a brief there. So that's another way of interacting with the object.